Good evening, everybody. On behalf of ISCM Kolkata branch, I welcome all of you to join this webinar. Today we have very good speaker today. First speaker will be Dr. Saswati Sinha. He is our senior consultant at AMRI Amri Hospital, and she is one of the I think right now in COVID area the way she has treated the patient, and there was one very long, means basically a very patient was there more than I think 1.5 months, and that patient was having too many difficulties. Before that, actually, we had some pessimism about the COVID-19 getting ventilated from across the, not only India, across the world, but Dr. Saswati and her team has shown that kind of courage as well as a kind of best treatment effort that actually allow that patient, relatively young patient, to survive that. And also she did a few patients with the ECMO. So that's why she is one of the best. And not only that, recently she had also got the award from Sangbad Pratidin, the best doctor's award from Calcutta, and in quite younger age. So in this context, just I want to say about Dr. Saswati that right now in the COVID area, we have seen that the women administrator or women doctors or whatever, they are leading than their counterpart. So it's really a pleasure to be, basically I invite her to start. And but before that, there are Dr. Tanmay just has not joined. Dr. Tanmay, I think he will shortly join. He is senior consultant as well as director critical care medicine at Medica Super Speciality Hospital. Today he will moderate that session. And after that, there are Dr. Orpon is there. Dr. Orpon is also senior consultant at Medica Hospital. And not only that, he has very keen interest in the ECMO. And I think Orpon was also our president of the ECMO Society of India. And every year he used to do some ECMO conference, and yet I think that is very resourceful conference as well as meeting. Whoever is interested, they can join that year. And after that, Dr. Arindam Kaur. Dr. Arindam was my colleague in Medica Super Speciality Hospital. He is also senior consultant in critical care medicine and leading ICU, I think, in charge in the Calcutta Hospital as well as in the Bellevue Hospital. And he is the present secretary-elect in ISCCM Mumbai. So his tenure will start by 2021 February. So I welcome all of you, and without any further delay, because Dr. Tanmay has not joined, so I will request Dr. Saswati to present his one interesting case who was going through ECMO therapy, and I think that will the past case and followed by the later on. Once Dr. Tanmay will join, I will hand over the platform to Dr. Tanmay. Dr. Saswati, please.
Thank you, Shorinda, for the kind introduction. So, good evening, everyone. It is my privilege to present the story of a young lady whom we treated about a month ago. And she was a 24-year-old girl with no known comorbidities in the past. And she presented to us on 17th of May in the early evening with high-grade fever, headache, and cough of 5 days duration prior to admission. She also had been having several episodes of vomiting for 4 days, and for which she had taken some antibiotics at home. And she complained of shortness of breath for 2 days, but more since a few hours prior to admission. She had no history of travel anywhere, of course, because we were already into lockdown for about a month and a half, or any contact with any family member who had traveled anywhere. And none of her family members had similar symptoms at that present moment. When the emergency medical officer called me, this girl was already quite restless in the emergency. She was febrile and had a significant sinus tachycardia of 147 per minute. Her blood pressure was 130/70. She was very tachypneic, and they said that they had recorded a saturation of 34% on room air in the emergency room. So they put her on a non-rebreathing mask and they transferred her to the ICU. Upon arrival to the ICU, she was a little bit obtunded, quite restless, and they recorded a saturation of 50% on a non-rebreathing mask. She was trying to remove the mask repeatedly and was very breathless. And ABG done at that time showed a pH of 7.15, carbon dioxide of 35, severe hypoxia, a PO2 of 43, and she had a significant metabolic acidosis and lactate in view of these findings and her clinical picture, she was immediately intubated and ventilated. And she was started with on an FiO2 of 1, a tidal volume of 6 ml per kg, a respiratory rate of 35 per minute, and PEEP was gradually titrated up to 15 centimeters of water. She was sedated and paralyzed and also started on an midazolam, fentanyl, and atracurium infusions. She had high airway pressures. Her plateau pressure with these above settings was already 30 and a driving pressure of 15. All her routine investigations were sent, and including the cultures. And at that time, we had just about started seeing few patients with COVID. So not only was her endotracheal aspirate sent for a biofire, but it was also sent for COVID-19. She was started on broad spectrum antibiotics pending investigations and other supportive medications apart from whatever ventilation and the sedative infusions she was on. And she was started on enoxaparin in a prophylaxis dose at that point in time. But we knew we were facing an uphill task because of her severity of her hypoxemia. So this was the chest X-ray on presentation, and although it's a portable X-ray, the quality is not very good, but showed extensive infiltrates with just a little bit of aeration probably in the right lower zone, but otherwise there were infiltrates all over. So on 3 hours of these settings, her saturation remained 69 to 70% on an FiO2 of 1 and PEEP of 50 centimeters of water. Sorry for the typo. And so we decided to turn her prone at that time. It was already about 8:30 p.m. on a Sunday evening. And we were not getting anywhere. So we spoke to the father of the patient and explained him about the severe hypoxemia, and we turned her prone around that time. Around midnight, after 4 hours in the prone position with the same ventilatory settings on an FiO2 of 1 and PEEP of 15, her ABG hadn't changed much. The pH was still low, PCO2 of 64, her PF ratio was still 48. So the father was counseled again regarding the severity of the illness, a possibility that we might wait for a few more hours, but if things did not take a turn for the better, then ECMO was probably the only thing which we were looking at, because there was hardly any room to maneuver as far as our ventilatory settings is concerned. These were the routine investigations. So a white cell count of 11,500, a platelet of 4.7 lakhs, not much significant in the biochemistry. So a normal urea creatinine, marginally elevated AST. Her D-dimer was 2.69 and her ferritin was 1060. An echo done before we turned her prone showed a good biventricular systolic function and an ejection fraction of 65%. By next morning, we got the lower respiratory biofire, which showed a methicillin-sensitive Staph aureus. So her antibiotics were de-escalated, and her SARS-CoV-2 tested positive. So even after 16 hours in prone position, the saturation had barely come up from 70% to about 82 to 84%. And the PF ratio was almost unchanged, just about 52. So we were almost nearing 20 to 24 hours post-admission. And she met the criteria basically with optimizing the ventilatory support, a neuromuscular blockade, titration of PEEP, and her Murray score, which we calculate depending upon the severity of hypoxemia, the level of PEEP, the lung compliance, and the number of quadrants infiltrated on the chest X-ray. So she had a Murray score of 3.8. And finally, the family did agree for ECMO. and veno-venous ECMO was initiated just about 24 hours after her admission. And she had a drainage cannula which was placed in the femoral vein, and a return cannula into the right IJ. And the ventilatory settings after initiation of ECMO and once her saturation, etc., improved, we lowered the tidal volume to 3 ml per kg, because now was the time when the lungs needed to be removed from the injurious effect of the high airway pressures. So the PEEP was reduced to 10 and a respiratory rate of about 12. And so she stabilized to a certain extent for the first 3 days. Uh, uh, but after that, we saw that on the day 4, there was a significant worsening of her lung compliance. A repeat X-ray showed a complete opacification of the left hemithorax. We did a point of care ultrasound, no effusion. So it appeared to be a collapse, which did not improve with changing the humidification, thorough suctioning, and all of that. And because she had a 7 size endotracheal tube, it was difficult to, and also because of the COVID-19, we were thinking twice before definitely deciding whether to go ahead with a bronchoscopy at that point in time. So we were left with no option but to expedite the tracheostomy. Normally, in a COVID-19 patient, it's recommended to delay the tracheostomy as much as possible to reduce the exposure to the of the healthcare personnel to the infection. But since things were not getting better, it was decided to go ahead with a percutaneous tracheostomy, which was done taking all possible precautions. And luckily, our ENT surgeon, he agreed to come to our rescue at that point in time. And even despite the tracheostomy and tracheal toileting, the lung continued to remain white on the left side. So on day 9, fiber optic bronchoscopy was done, and it showed a hyperemic mucosa of the left lower lobe with thick mucus plugs which were suctioned out. Following which, over the next 24 hours, there was a significant improvement in the patient's lung compliance. And we repeated an X-ray, which definitely shows an improved aeration. So the left side seems to have opened up quite well. And her oxygenation also significantly improved, as well as the lung mechanics. She had a new fever for which all the cultures were sent. The bronchial lavage also was negative. The blood culture grew pneumonas, which was treated appropriately with antibiotics. All her invasive lines were changed. And since day 10 onwards, she showed a significant improvement in the gas exchange. So gradually, we were able to increase the tidal volume. Her neuromuscular blockade was stopped. After a brief period of about 12 hours of restlessness, and she seems to she seemed to follow commands and was quite awake at that point of time. And from day 11, the initiation of weaning of ECMO was started. And on day 12, we were able to decannulate her from ECMO. Over the next few days, she was gradually weaned off the ventilator, and we started her on physiotherapy and aggressive mobilization. And on 19th day after admission, we could decannulate her tracheostomy, following which she was mobilized and physiotherapy was started. And on day 22, we were able to discharge her, and she was alert, oriented, with saturating 99% on room air, hemodynamically stable. Although she had some neuromuscular weakness, some proximal muscle weakness, she was requiring assistance for feeding and mobilization at that point in time. But I was very, very happy to see her walking into my OPD today morning itself. So just briefly, before Dr. Arpon takes over regarding ECMO and scope and challenges in the pandemic situation. So the ECMO in COVID-19, the WHO has issued interim guidelines, and they recommend transfer of patients with the most refractory hypoxemia with centers with expertise in ECMO, and also has put forward the criteria based on which a patient can be referred for ECMO, depending upon the PF ratio, if it remains less than 60 for more than 6 hours, or less than 50 for greater than 3 hours, or a refractory respiratory acidosis, pH of less than 7.2 with a PCO2 of greater than 80 for more than 6 hours.